Now, my name is Lesley Regan. I'm an obstetrician and gynecologist in my day job, and when I'm not doing that, I'm the newly appointed chair of Wellbeing of Women, the charity which has funded research into every aspect of women's health across the life course. But I'm absolutely thrilled to be hosting this event with our patron of Wellbeing of Women, Her Royal Highness, the Countess of Wessex. Your Royal Highness, we're so thrilled that you've graced us with your presence this morning, and we're so delighted that you're going to be contributing to the discussion. So this event is going to involve representatives from organisations and women's networks who are engaged in or would like to help in addressing menopause in their workplaces. We're thrilled by the positive response from almost everybody we've reached out to. So that makes me feel very confident that we're going to be able to bring to light some of the workplace specific issues facing women going through the menopause, as well as discussing potential actions that employers can take. We've got a really, really impressive lineup of speakers. I'm going to introduce them in a moment. We are thrilled and proud to be partnering with Hello Magazine on this campaign to raise awareness of menopause. And I'd very much like to thank BUPA for supporting us today. It was most generous of them, and we're most appreciative. So I mentioned that Wellbeing of Women has been an entity for many years now, over nearly 70 years, and it has funded some really sentinel research into women's health across the life course. New chair, COVID pandemic, we realised that we really had to have a new strategy. And so with the help of my colleague, Sasha Nathan from GenPact, one of our partners, we set about looking into what we needed to do as a charity to have greater reach and to actually include women in the decision making about their own health. And so our new strategy is now 3 pillars, not just the one. So research into women's health, and also we want to branch into the fields of education and advocacy for women's health. I firmly believe, as an old timer in the gynecology and obstetric world, that when we make women part of the solution to their problems, not even their problems, yet make them part of the solution of improving their own health or maintaining their own health, then everybody gets benefits. And some of you may know that when I was the president of the Royal College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, we published a report in December 2019 entitled Better for Women. And we often used to say to the politicians and policymakers we were launching this report to, when we get it for women, everybody benefits. And perhaps it should have been called Better for Women and Better for Less, because you can make great economic savings if you look after women properly and put them at the centre of the care and wrap the services around them, rather than make the women go on a journey around all the different services. So the Menopause Workplace Pledge. Now, I don't want anyone to think that's going to be onerous. It's very, very simple. Every company that employs women is going to be able to achieve it. What we're asking is the organisations to recognise that the menopause can be an issue in the workplace and that women need our support or their support, to talk openly, positively and respectfully about the menopause. And number 3, to commit to actively support and inform employees affected by the menopause. So every company can achieve that. This is not rocket science, it's very simple. It just needs just a will to actually make a difference and contribute. Now, why do we think it's important? Well, I probably don't need to tell most of the people on this platform that there is an inevitability about every woman and girl that we know becoming menopausal at some age. The average age in the UK is 51.5 years, and there's a big range. And I think the other thing I wanted to emphasise as the chair of Wellbeing of Women is that my generation, and I am menopausal, is going to live longer as a menopausal woman than we were reproductive. And that's the first generation in history, thanks to longevity and the way that societal health has improved so greatly. So although, as I often say to our Chief Executive, Janet Lindsay, and the other wellbeing members of the team who are with us today, I'm not planning to live forever, but for the time I am here on this planet, I want to live as well as possible. And I think there's so much that we can do to help women really, really fulfill their post-menopausal or post-reproductive life. We know that the workplace is where women find their symptoms most difficult to manage. And we know that when we provide women with support in that workplace, they are far, far more likely to continue to go to work and continue to contribute. And remember, it's those 50, 60 and possibly 70-year-old women who've got the most experience and the most to contribute. So the last thing we want to do is to have them retiring early or sloping off into the shadows because they don't feel that they're able to contribute to their full potential. And I'm sure that it can't be any employer here, man or woman, who doesn't think that that's a really, really worthwhile aim. So we've undertaken a recent social media tracking of women's menopause in the workplace, recorded lots of different conversations across an enormously wide cross-section of society. And I can summarize what those women talked about very, very simply. They talked about stigma. They talked about lack of self-confidence. They talked about becoming progressively lower in their self-esteem. And they talked about sheer fatigue caused by menopause, affecting them physically and mentally, and how it really impacted their productivity in the workplace, and then, of course, the rest of their life. So I think we could also mention to you that 49% of the conversations in this listening campaign, that was our preamble to launching this event today, 49% of the conversations focused on stress and anxiety, 30% on loss of confidence, 15% on fatigue and weariness, that's 1 in 6 or 7 women, and 9% on fear of losing a job and their career opportunities if they were to let people know that they were menopausal or worried about perimenopausal symptoms. So we've got a big remit, but everything is doable if everybody involved does a little bit. And with that, I'm going to pass over now to Her Royal Highness, the Countess of Wessex, the patron of wellbeing of women, to thank you again, Your Royal Highness, for coming to join us today. And the floor is yours, or rather the platform is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lesley, and to everybody this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm very proud indeed to have become patron of wellbeing of women. The work that they do is absolutely vital. And this conversation that we're having today is so vital, and it is about having conversations and raising the awareness of something that is so incredibly natural. But it is something that is and has been over generations been swept under the carpet. And so people have to suffer in silence. And what we know is, of course, if you share information, if you make something very normal, then people feel empowered to be able to, one, talk about it, but also do something about it. And certainly for the conversations that I've had so far, everybody, including our wonderful male colleagues, have been fantastically supportive. And to be honest with you, I think often they're very much in the dark about all of this, as we all are, until we reach that point. And suddenly we're in this boat, not really knowing where it's going. So we need a guiding light. We need to be able to know what to do about it. And to think that women are having to leave the workplace because of this is just tragic. We are fabulous in our 40s. We're even more fabulous in our 50s, 60s and 70s. And we need to celebrate that and keep those opportunities going for women. But of course, we need a platform and an understanding of how to support people. And that is what today is all about. And I'm so happy that you've come together to join with us to make this pledge that together we can help support the countless thousands of women out there who form the backbone of our workforce in all sorts of different walks of life. And we cannot let anybody leave that workforce unfulfilled and also feeling that they have got to slope off into the shadows. It's not right, and we've got to be able to change that. And today, that's hopefully where it's going to start. So I'm really delighted that you've joined us today, and that you're going to be making the pledge, we hope. And also we'll share best practice and also stories of where things have not been so good, because of course there are many of those. So really today it's your platform to share with us your experiences, what we can learn from them, what we can do better, and how we can support business to really support its workforce. So really, I want to be able to say once more, thank you. And I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you today. But most importantly, and firstly, I'd like to introduce you to a wonderful woman who's going to talk about her experiences of the menopause in the workplace. So I'd really like to introduce you now to Barbara Claypole.
Your Royal Highness, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So it's really lovely to be here today. I'll just explain a little bit about the reason why I'm here. I'm here to represent women in the workplace, I guess, who are currently going through their menopause, and women who've yet to experience their menopause but might need help in the future. So I guess for me, I better sort of just go back a bit. So my menopause journey really started probably about 4 or 5 years ago in my perimenopause, when I started to experience menopausal symptoms. So I was already struggling a little bit in the workplace, but really for me, the full-blown menopause hit me in 2019 when I had hysterectomy surgery. I had always been a really confident, high-performing manager. I was in senior management roles for over 20 years. And for me, the menopause came as a real shock, because literally overnight, everything changed for me. I felt very anxious all of the time. I had symptoms such as hot flushes and night sweats, fatigue, which obviously was mentioned earlier. But I also had things like brain fog, lack of concentration. And actually, I really started to struggle to take part in meetings and to concentrate and lead my teams at work. So it was really strange for me, because it wasn't something that I was natural in doing, but actually this is probably the first time in my career that I had to actually go to my manager and HR and ask for some help and support, because I knew I needed support. I couldn't get through this on my own. I couldn't manage that back-to-back diary that I'd always just naturally done. I couldn't manage all my staff that I'd naturally done. And I just completely lost confidence. So initially, when I did speak up about it, I thought I would be supported. And initially, all the right things were said to me. However, when I actually went to ask for some real flexibility in my role, and I asked for things like, could I have some small breaks between meetings? And that was, for me, was to be able to go outside just for a few minutes in fresh air, to be able to cool down, because I used to have like hot flushes during the meetings. Simple things like, could I have a fan at my desk without people making comments as to why I had a fan on me at my desk? You know, I don't think I asked for anything very difficult, and I certainly didn't ask for anything that would have really cost any money. And unfortunately, I was told at the time that there wouldn't be any changes to my role, no changes were needed, it was fine as it was. And actually, I was made to feel like an underperforming manager, not a successful manager who was asking for help. There was no menopause policy in place, no menopause champions that I could turn to. And I just really felt completely alone, actually. It was as though no one in my workplace had ever talked about menopause before. It was like they'd never heard of women in menopause and didn't understand the impact it can have on your performance at work. You know, so eventually, despite the sort of keep calm and carry on attitude that I really had, and I tried very hard, I became one of the 10% of women that do just literally walk away from their careers due to their menopausal symptoms. Since then, I've spoken to so many women and met so many women who are in exactly the same position as me. And I find it heartbreaking, really, because the amount of talent that's walked away from organisations, I think, is quite, it's quite sad, actually, really. And particularly, I think what it does as well is it lets women walk away and leave with their confidence completely destroyed. It leaves them very low in their self-esteem, and it takes a long time to build that confidence back up. So I do now consider myself very fortunate. I've worked really hard to build my confidence back up. I have a great GP who's very supportive to me. I have a brilliant network of women, amazing women who've helped me more than anything else. And actually just being able to speak about it with those women has been a great help for me. I think one of the things that I've learned as well is the more you can speak about it to men and women, and the more everyone gets involved in conversations, we can break down those taboos and definitely change the experiences for women in the future. I look back now and I know that some small, simple changes, a little bit of a culture change perhaps, and just being a bit more open to listening to a woman in the workplace who's asking for help, just those simple things can completely change the life of that woman and can retain her in your organisation to carry on delivering successfully for you. So for me, I think it's a matter of giving women dignity in the workplace, and I wouldn't want another woman to feel as isolated as I did. So that's why I'm, I guess, one of the women who's happy to speak out at this point and to share my own personal experiences of my own menopause. So with that, obviously, look forward to joining in the conversation with you all, but I just want to say thank you all for listening.
Barbara, thank you so much. Thank you for being so trusting and so candid about your experience. It's really, really valuable. 10% of women, as you say, leave the workforce, and not many of them are talking about it. So we really do appreciate it. Thank you. I'm going to move on to Natasha Adams, who is the Chief People Officer at Tesco PLC. And Natasha is going to share with us the fact that Tesco really have been a bit ahead of the curve, and she's going to tell us a bit about what they put in place to make sure employees, who are a very diverse group of employees in their company, are supported, and why it's so important to their business. So over to you. Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you very much, Lesley, and good morning, everyone. So Tesco employ 360,000 colleagues globally, just over 300,000 in the UK, and half of our employees are women. And so women's health and the life stages women go through really matter for us. And the spectrum of roles that women play in our organisation means that this is really important to us, and it's really important that the majority of our women have the opportunity to not have what Barbara has described. On the World Menopause Day in 2019, we launched across the business a guide to women's health. And this guide was all spectrums of women's health, but we put a focus on menopause. The guide is about education, building awareness, help and support for colleagues, but also help and support for managers. We used it as a platform to start conversations. So we've had some very big events, and we've also had some really small, intimate events. I would say that in all of our events, there are as many men as there are women. There's a real need and commitment from sort of male managers, but men in our organisation who feel like they want to know more, and that's been super encouraging and has really helped us to keep that conversation going. We've used those platforms and those stories to show the spectrum of experiences and jobs. So an example would be one of our directors in the bank talked about going through the menopause and what that meant in her job and in the environment that she's in. But we've also got groups of colleagues who work in our stores and in our depots who we spotlight, who are really happy to share their stories. Through sharing stories, through sharing experience, we're continuing to listen and learn. So an example would be that our store colleagues told us that during their menopause, actually our uniform doesn't make them feel comfortable at work. And it's really difficult to do their job, manage the symptoms, and still feel like they can be themselves, and that they're looked after and taken care of and valued. So over the last 18 months, a fabulous group of women in our stores and distribution team have been testing a new uniform. Our F&F designers came and helped and worked with those colleagues. And I'm delighted to say that we're launching that new uniform in January, and that those colleagues are going to be the face of the sort of opportunity to be able to opt into menopause uniform as and when you need it. It's essentially a bit more breathable, a bit longer at the back. You get a few more than your normal allocation because actually, you get hotter and sweatier. And the colleagues have told us that it makes a massive difference. So we're really proud of that. And we're really proud of being able to continue to spotlight stories. And we're working with our colleagues and with our Women at Tesco network in how we evolve a more clearly defined menopause policy. Still to be confirmed, but we're working through what we think that can mean and how we can continue to raise the capability of managers so that actually, they will have the biggest impact, and that's the biggest focus we've got over the next 6 to 12 months. We're by no means, saying we've cracked this. It's absolutely an ongoing effort, an ongoing conversation, and an ongoing sort of radar by which we just make sure that we're giving as best an experience we can to colleagues going through the menopause. And we know that we don't get it right in every circumstance, but we want to continue to listen and learn. And we're absolutely delighted to join the pledge and to sort of share a bit of our story today. So thank you.
Natasha, thank you so much. It's an impressive achievement you've made, and I think that your examples are wonderful, because they're things that everyone can aspire to do. I'm a great believer in we need to give people carrots, not sticks. You know, just you could be this good too. So thank you for sharing that experience. Can I now move on to Caroline Nokes, MP, and also chair of the Women and Equalities Commission. And Caroline is leading the inquiry into menopause discrimination in Parliament, looking at whether the equality law needs to be strengthened and whether I think menopause could possibly become a protected characteristic. But Caroline, we're thrilled to have you here. Thank you for giving us your time, and we really look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lesley. And I always start this by declaring my interest as a 49-year-old woman who I regard as not even yet being at the height of my career. And I think that's a really important message, because that's something that the Women Equalities Committee is very closely looking at. The women who are being lost to their careers, absolutely in the prime of their lives, or perhaps not quite yet in the prime of their lives. So we're talking about the experienced, the talented, and picking up on what Barbara said, those who have had confidence and are seeing that confidence chipped away at. And I think that's one of the horrendous tragedies of the menopause, is that actually what we are seeing is 10% of women being lost to their careers, and all of those younger women losing the role models that they so desperately need, the ones who they wish to aspire to be. I'm really pleased to be here today with Carolyn Harris, a Labour colleague in Parliament. And I'm very quick to emphasise that the last time Carolyn and I were in a room together asking for something, the discussion that we had with the men present was about when, not if. And that's the important thing, that this is about turning our minds to something together, absolutely making sure that this is a cross-party and a really united effort. And the thing that really strikes me that the media keep asking me is, why now? And I think that's a question that I don't necessarily have a very good answer to, but why now? Because too many of us have got to the point where we're not going to put up with this any longer. And you see a critical mass in Parliament. So not only do we have my committee looking very closely at the impact of menopause in the workplace, and what a fantastic advert from Natasha for Tesco's, I think is definitely time for her to be summoned in front of my committee to come and give us evidence, because actually what we want to find out about is not just the horror stories, not just the bad practice, but the good, the excellent examples of companies that have really got on the front foot, that are having those conversations, are making sure that they're highlighting the stories so that we beat down that taboo, so that we're all prepared to talk about our personal stories and make sure that we can provide a better route map going forward. So we've really only just started taking evidence, and we launched a survey a couple of weeks ago to understand the extent of the impact. But the thing that has shocked, horrified me is the number of negative stories that we've heard, and how many of them have come from women who have asked either to have their story kept confidential, in which case it doesn't make it into the published evidence, or for it to be anonymised. And that really struck me, that we were talking about managers, directors, women who previously had been absolutely at the top of their career, just like Barbara, talking about the loss of confidence and being scared to let that be known, worrying what the impact would be on their future career if they spoke publicly about it. And I think that's a really important thing. We have to not just beat down the taboo, we have to make sure that companies understand that there are good examples they can follow, and that we can't be marginalizing and discriminating against women going forward. So the one question that people give me is, will there be legislation? Now, that's something I can't offer. I'm a mere select committee chairman. It is my job to scrutinise and push the government into positions, but actually legislation will be their domain. But too many women have been forced to use disability discrimination legislation. The menopause is not a disability. It's a fact of life for every single one of us. So it's crucially important that we find a better route map going forward. But it's a real privilege to be here this morning, and I'm looking forward to taking part in the discussions later.
Thank you very much indeed, Caroline. We're thrilled that you've got this role, because we can't think of anyone better to be pushing forward the cause on the Conservative benches. And now I'm going to move to Carolyn Harris, who is, as you heard, a Labour Member of Parliament. She's joining us from a little cupboard in Brighton because she's at the Labour Party conference, but so committed was she to contributing that she's, I think, in some personal discomfort at the moment, but thank you, Carolyn. She's also chair of the all-party parliamentary group on menopause and is pushing the menopause support and services bill, which hopefully may even exempt HRT from NHS prescription charges in England, as is already the case in Wales and Scotland. So Carolyn, over to you. We're thrilled to have you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. I am so honoured to be here today, and I'm absolutely overwhelmed by the reaction that we've had from other women. The reason why I am so interested in the menopause is that I went from belting out Hey Big Spender on the karaoke to being in a pink anorak with a hood up for 6 months, thinking that I was having a nervous breakdown. Convinced my doctor I had a nervous breakdown, and I've ended up on antidepressants for the last 11 years. And as a woman who's not unintelligent, well, I hope not, being as I am an MP, I am now in a position where, having started HRT just a few months ago, I am weaning myself off antidepressants because I now start to feel that I'm not terrified of returning to the pink anorak. And my job in a past life, I was a dinner lady and I was a barmaid. I could never have done those jobs feeling the way I have felt for the last 11 years. And it's only because I know that there are good people in Parliament and that I've been given a golden opportunity with the Private Members Bill to actually make menopause become such an important matter that everybody talks about, and the focus that we can bring to it with parliamentary colleagues, that I am pushing this bill, and I have started the menopause revolution. And I want everybody to become menopause warriors, because men, women, children, regardless of age, regardless of political affinity, will at some point in their life either meet someone with a menopause, employ someone with a menopause, be married to someone with a menopause, or may actually be experiencing the menopause, because it is something we cannot escape. And all I ask is that we give women respect, we give women dignity, that we allow those women in the workplace to retain in the workplace and to actually be treated with the dignity and respect they deserve by making the tweaks like Tesco have made, but by giving them the opportunity to talk out. It's not a taboo subject. I use the word vaginal dryness, and I've seen faces glaze over thinking, my God, I can't believe she just said that. It's a fact of life. The menopause is a fact of life. We have got to stop pretending that it'll go away if we don't talk about it and we ignore it. We have to give women the respect. We have to keep them in work. We have to offer them the opportunity to start life after menopause, during menopause, and embrace what comes with it, because my God, we haven't done that till now. So my revolution is going to make sure that everybody talks about it, everybody does the right thing, that we treat women with respect, and that we make sure that no woman ever feels too embarrassed to say to her employer, I would need some time out, I'm not feeling too well, I am menopausal, because it's something to be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. How beautifully put. And we're all part of your revolution. And that brings me straight on to introduce our next speaker, who is a menopause warrior, I think. He's the only male of the invited speakers this morning, but I don't want him to feel in too much of I'm a minority. It's a thrill to be introducing you to Alex Perry, who is the CEO of BUPA Insurance Limited. And Alex is going to share with us why he's become a menopause warrior. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, Lesley. Yeah, so I mean, why am I a menopause warrior? I think I'm passionate about this topic from several different perspectives. As a large employer, BUPA employs over 40,000 people in the UK. 68% of those are female. As a business leader, as a healthcare provider, and also as a husband, a father of girls, and a son. So when I was growing up, I saw my mum leave what had been, a really successful career. She was the first ever female board director in her company. And in her early 50s, you know, she started to lose confidence. She had issues coping at work. And, you know, of course, I had no idea what was going on at the time. And it was only a few years ago, you know, that it clicked that the menopause she was starting at that time had played a big role. And, you know, it was a huge loss of talent for her firm. And also, you know, it had a big impact on us as a family. You know, we were a single parent family. And so, you know, this topic is very personal for me. So I really wanted to quickly give 4 key messages today. And the first key message is that really all organizations need to take this really seriously. So, you know, women aged 40 plus are the fastest growing demographic in the workplace. As has been said earlier on, you know, these women are at the top of their game when it comes to their career, their knowledge, their expertise. You know, it's a huge and vital pool of talent. And research that we've done has found that actually that now in the UK, there are 1 million women who have left the workplace altogether due to menopausal system. You know, it's a terrible and incredible statistic, and you know, it's such a waste and incredible loss of talent to the UK workforce. So if you care about gender diversity in your organization, and if you care about the performance of your organization, you need to care about your gender diversity. Then you need to get serious about women's health. And, you know, it's really now imperative that all organizations, you know, are supporting women to stay well and stay in work. And listen, you know, thanks to a number of high profile campaigns, you can see it creeping up organizations, people agendas. You know, I see a big change over the last 2-3 years. And it's similar a bit to mental health a few years ago, but there's still, you know, incredible amount more to do. So that was my first key message. All organizations need to take this seriously. The second key message is men need to lead on this agenda as well as women. You know, you can see women becoming more empowered to take action now, you know, following the Davina McCall documentary a little while ago on menopause. You know, bookings in our menopause services absolutely rocketed, and it was, you know, it was great. You know, it was great to see. But education empowerment of women is not enough to deal with you know, the issues that I referred to. You know, still, unfortunately, most senior leaders in most organizations are men, and without men engaging and leading on this topic, we're not going to make the progress that we need on getting the right support in place in the workforce. So, you know, I feel very privileged to be invited into this discussion today, and, you know, we need to keep inviting men into the discussion to overcome what I think, you know, a widespread reticence to, you know, engage in discussions on women's health. 2 of the big steps that need to take place that often don't are that you know, women or their families or friends or colleagues recognize what's happening and going on, and you know, get the right help. And then there's the actual fact of getting the right help. And you know, almost all men and still many women are you know, quite ignorant of the menopause and what to look out for and what to do. Even as there's been said, you know, every single woman is going to go through it. But it's not a topic that's been widely discussed in families or society in the past. And I think it's, you know, so you know, increasing the conversation, I think, is going to be so important. And there's still a lot of mythology out there in the world around things like HRT and possible side effects, and really, you know, quite an unbalanced view, I think, of HRT that often ignores the effects of the menopause, and that goes actually for some medical professionals as well, I'm afraid. And you know, it's still a bit of pot luck, you know, whether you're going to get the right care or not.
That's really helpful. Thank you very much indeed. Now, we've got so many participants, all of whom are really, really eligible to speak. So I'm hopefully not going to generate some hate mail by sort of picking some people. It's not because we don't value you all, but we'll just have to see how many of you can chip in, please, and contribute in the time that we've got left. So remember about the pledge, recognising that the menopause can be an issue in the workforce and that women need your support to talk openly and positively and respectfully and then to commit to actively support and inform employees. I'm going to now ask some of our participants to give us a few words or their particular take on it or their experience. And I'm going to start with Gabby Logan, who's a TV and radio presenter that I don't think I really needed to introduce you. She's very well known. And Gabby is going to tell us a little bit about how the menopause impacted her career. Gabby, over to you.
Thank you, Lesley. About a year and a half ago, I started a podcast called Midpoint. And at that point, I was about 47, which according to the Economic and Social Research Council means I'm bang in the middle of midpoint. And I did it because I was really kind of feeling changes going on in my life that weren't necessarily physical, were more emotional. And it wasn't until I started the podcast and started interviewing guests, I realized I was perimenopausal. And I spoke to a range of people, men and women, because the idea was that we're all in this together. And actually, the more the podcast has gone on, the more interesting for me the feedback has been from women who've got their husbands to listen, or my husband going out on a dog walk, coming in going, oh my gosh, I had no idea about that. And so that men kind of woman kind of confluence of everybody understanding is so important to me. It kind of just briefly is what I've always said about women's sport. Men have got to watch women's sport for women's sport to grow. And we've all got to understand kind of what's going on with the other side. We've got brothers, we've got husbands, we've got uncles, we work with men and women together, whether you're married to one or not. And so the Midpoint was a revelation for me personally, because I was interviewing all these people who were feeding information back to me. And then my curiosity was growing. And one guest in particular, Mariella Frostrop, had talked about her hormone treatment. And afterwards I said, Mariella, could you give me that doctor's number, please? There's a few things going on. I'm going to go and see her. Anyway, being very candid, I had some blood tests. The doctor rang me up and she said, are you on your own? And I thought she was going to deliver some really bad news. She said, I've got some news for you. You're going to have one more period. And she's right. I've had one more period since that phone call. And that I had no idea that my hormones were so low, but it started to explain my anxiety, forgetfulness, feeling a little bit fearful about what I was doing. Was it the pandemic that was making me feel like that, or was it something else? I wasn't myself. I wasn't finding joy. I wasn't finding that kind of excitement in things that I did before. And so I then went on to had some hormone treatment, and within a few months felt unbelievably well. But I was still a little bit reluctant to openly talk about that because it felt like I'd almost let the side down. It's a bit like having pain relief in childbirth or something. And then ask myself those questions: why do I feel I'm kind of letting anybody down about this? And the more I talked to people, Davina came on my podcast and talked about her dry vagina, and we had all kinds of candid conversations that helped me, certainly personally, to understand that this is something that does need to be talked about, because we have achieved so much as women, as society, to give women a platform, to give women the rights to all kinds of things we didn't have 50, 100 years ago. The idea that women who's turned 51, 52 suddenly stop contributing is just, it's madness. And we've gone through the hard stuff. We've had our babies, we've juggled careers. This should be the time that we are really coming into our own, giving all that knowledge, experience and wisdom that we've garnered, not creeping off into a corner. And a very good friend of mine briefly, who is, she's a mega woman on the board of a massive bank, and she said to me, I can't stand up in front of people and tell them they've got to buy a company worth hundreds of millions of pounds and find myself sweating and embarrassed about it. But she said, I'm not going to creep off and leave that job, because it's important I'm still there. It's important that we have leaders who are women. We have women who are championing causes for men and women in society. And so, yeah, as you can tell, it's become a real passion of mine that we keep pushing the conversation to the forefront. I had Penny Lancaster on the podcast who talked about throwing chickens at the wall. She was so frustrated. And I thought, with Penny Lancaster, the wife of Rod Stewart, can talk about her menopause, then I think we're all kind of fair game here. Sorry, that's not a pun for the chickens. So yeah, I'm delighted to be part of today's conversation, Lesley, and thank you for letting me have a chat about it.
Thank you for contributing. It's lovely of you to be here. I'm going to ask Uma Cresswell, who's president and chair of the City Women's Network, to say a few words. And Uma, I think you're going to possibly share with us that there are particular barriers for women of colour.
Yes, thank you. Really insightful discussion this morning. So yes, I chair and lead City Women's Network, but I also have an HR background and worked in investment banking and sat on alpha male trading floors for over 30 years and have gone through all of the things that we've just discussed. I was looking to talk to some of our membership, and our membership consists of corporates as well as individual members. And there is a particular nuance around women of colour. And anecdotally, I've got my own personal views on this, but if I just focus on women from the Black Afro-Caribbean heritage, menopause is just something that just happened. And I think there's a lovely quote here from one of them that said, in our Afro-Caribbean and Asian generation of women, it was an invisible experience in plain sight. You just got on with it. And when I think about my grandmother who had 10 children, I never once heard her complain about being menopausal. She just got on with it and ran a massive household. So I think there's another nuance around the workplace education and awareness that we've discussed this morning, that a lot of women of colour may not necessarily feel comfortable coming forward to talk about this. And many workplaces are really struggling to align the policies and benefits to allow support when this sort of condition or situation arises. So I think we just need to probably spend a bit of time as leaders and as HR specialists and CEOs and every other role we play, just to think about how we can sort of perhaps draw some of those experiences out. And I think myself and some of these senior women of colour, we're actively going out talking about what it is culturally from our perspective. And I'm certainly talking to my daughter about it already now. So I think it's about encouraging those conversations. And the male ally piece is so important. You know, those of you that have partners, children, daughters who come into that age, I think it was fantastic what Alex said. That's when it really becomes real, because you've lived in a household where that's going on. And I think the final business imperative I just wanted to mention was just, we're just going to perpetuate the gender pay gap situation even more. We already have that when women leave the industry, when they have children potentially and find it hard to return to work. And as Gabby's just said, when you're in your prime of life, you've had your children, this is the time to give back. And if we have women in their 40s and 50s leaving, I'm 55, I'm actively still in the workplace, this is such a terrible detriment to the gender pay gap, which is already a massive, massive challenge. So just some anecdotal feedbacks I've had from some corporates and individuals I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Uma. Can I pass briefly over to Sarah Churchman, who's the Chief Inclusion and Community and Wellbeing Officer at PwC.
Thank you, Lesley. Delighted to join you today. It's been wonderful. One of the things that we've been talking about at PwC is how can we better support our women, given that when it comes to the menopause, it's one of those certainties in life, right? Death, tax and the menopause. And so we've been engaging with our women to better understand what they do need and what they do want. And I think that's what we've been doing with all aspects of diversity in the workplace. How can we second guess people if we're not engaging with them? And they've been really receptive, many women wanting to share their stories. And I think that's what many women want to hear, that they're not alone, that the symptoms they're experiencing are something else, something that can be supported, they can receive support in. So we've been doing a lot of work in the workplace to better support people, connect them with each other, working with our 300 women who've come together as our Menopause Matters community to ensure we're giving the right workplace support. So I would encourage all employers to do just that. Talk to your employees.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for your brevity as well. I'm going to ask Claire Hardy, who's a senior lecturer at the University of Lancaster, and whom we're funding, or Wellbeing of Women are funding, to undertake research into the menopause and particularly interventions in the workplace. Claire, could you just give us a few snippets from your findings?
Yeah, my name's Claire Hardy. So I'm coming at this, I guess, from a more academic perspective. And my passion is to try and share what we know from the evidence, gathering new evidence, and actually get this into the workplace and actually expose, you know, what women are saying that they want, how they want to talk about it in the workplace, what support they want from workplaces. And actually, if I may, just say thank you to Wellbeing of Women, because you were actually one of the first funders that I'm aware of that actually funded research specifically into developing workplace interventions, looking at menopause in the workplace back in 2014. So I was lucky enough to be part of a 3-year project which started in 2015, ended in 2018, where we looked at developing brief workplace interventions to help working women who were experiencing problematic hot flushes and night sweats. And we tested a self-help guidebook on that. With working women, which we found helped, which was fantastic. And then the second intervention that we developed was line manager training, which we had to develop from scratch, because at the time we didn't talk about it. I say as much as we do now, we've still got a long way to go, but even then it was very much, we had to, you know, see what needed to be in this training. So we developed that training, we piloted it and found that it was significantly helpful in boosting line managers' levels of awareness about the menopause, but interestingly, their confidence to actually be able to talk about it in the workplace as well, which is quite significant actually, and it's certainly a good stepping stone.
Thank you very much, Claire, indeed. I'm going to move on to Israel Bryan, who's Regional Head of Diversity and Inclusion at the Standard Chartered Bank. And Israel, if you could just give us a quick insight into some of the actions of your company.
Thank you, Lesley. Well, Standard Chartered Bank this year, we partnered with the Financial Services Skills Commission to actually conduct research into the impact of menopause on the female talent pipeline across the entire industry. But some of the most startling insights that we found is many women don't even realize they're going through menopause when they start. And so really it's for organizations, it's for individual people, leaders, line managers, and it's for the sector as a whole to really drive that culture of inclusivity, as many of the guests have spoken about today, and just start talking about the issue and about menopause and the experiences a lot more openly, because the onus isn't on women to wait a year or a few months or hoping to understand what they're going through and then ask for help. It's for organizations to recognize and see how they can really help people perform at their best. And so we're really lucky that once we launch this research, we can help drive some really proactive action across the sector and help retain women, because as we've all noted today, it's a huge talent pipeline that we really need to capitalize and make sure that we're able to help people perform at their best.
Thank you, Israel. That's lovely. Moving swiftly on to Claire McCartney, who I think is going to give us a quick snapshot of what you found from your survey and report of all those women that have quit their jobs. Claire, just very briefly.
Very briefly, yes, we have launched guidance for HR and people managers. We have 150,000 members, so we are really trying to educate members so that people don't experience the same experiences that Barbara's just been talking about. In terms of where we are, in 2019, we did a poll of our members, 500, and only 9% had any dedicated menopause support in place. We repeated that poll just a few months ago, and that's gone up to 24%, but still, as you can see, clearly a long way to go. So we are very much supportive of creating menopause-friendly workplaces and the Women and Wellbeing Work Pledge, and also the Menopause Manifesto. So great to be part of the conversation today and actively promoting support in this area.
Very much, Claire. Now, I said earlier that I didn't want this to be an all women's issue, so I'm very pleased that my colleague and consultant gynecologist Haytham Hamoda has joined us today, but particularly because Haytham is the chair of the British Menopause Society. So Haytham, I wonder if you could just give us a few thoughts about what you're hoping to achieve with the BMS. You've heard about how difficult it is to get help at HRT, so perhaps a comment about that would be appropriate.
Thank you, Lesley and Janet and all. It's really great that you're doing this, and I'm really pleased that we'll be able to support it. So within the British Menopause Society, of course, within what we do, in addition to supporting healthcare professionals to providing education and training, of course, a big part of what we do is providing information to women. So we've got the Women's Health Concern, which is part of the patient arm of the society that has got videos and written material to support this. You've heard these powerful stories earlier on from Barbara, Carolyn, and Gabby, and of course, most women who have hot flushes and night sweats may be able to attribute these to the menopause, but we see many women day in, day out who have other symptoms, who like feeling tired, low mood, anxious, the brain fog, the memory, who are really worried that there's something going on with their health. So, and they haven't got access to information. So of course, there's much information out there on the internet and on social media, but unfortunately, there's also a lot of misinformation. So guiding women to accurate information is essential. Women being able to access advice on how they could, in a way, optimize the transition, and really there many years beyond is really important. And just going back to the point Caroline raised at the very beginning, why now, which is an interesting question, because probably a few years back we wouldn't have been able to have such a project or such meetings. And there was a lot of negativity around the menopause, a lot of negativity about the adverse effects potentially with HRT, little emphasis on the potential benefit in improving quality of life. And of course, the NICE guidance in 2015 was a very relevant point, turning point in this. The BMS guidance that followed and other guidance that highlighted that really for many women, HRT has got a very favorable benefit risk profile, including symptom management, improving quality of life, as well as the bone and the cardiovascular benefits that come with the intake. And I just wanted to kind of mention as well, we did a national survey, the British Menopause Society in 2016, 2017, and it highlighted many of the points raised throughout the meeting. 50% of women we interviewed mentioned that that the menopause had a negative impact on their family life. 36% mentioned that it had a negative impact on their social life. 45% had a negative impact on work, and 47% said they needed to take some time off work without telling, related to menopause symptoms, without telling their employer the real reason that they took the time off. And of male partners that were interviewed, 30% said they felt frustrated that they weren't able to understand what was going on and were not in a better position to be able to support their partners. Now, we've heard as well about the range of symptoms. And of course, it's relevant to say, while most women, more than 75% experience symptoms, not all will, but it is such a wide spectrum. 25% will have severe symptoms. So it's really important that we have the information and also individualized care. So we shouldn't have a one policy, one approach will fit all approach, because there needs to be individualization and support to help guide women in this context.
Thank you very much, Haytham. Really important. And I'm going to take Chair's prerogative, and I'm going to send everybody who's registered today a copy of the editorial that I wrote with Janice Reimer about 2 years ago in support of HRT, basically saying what women need is the information about their whole longevity, not just about the risks of breast cancer or clots. They need to be given the opportunity to make decisions for themselves. Because for some women, including myself, the pros of HRT far outweighed any negatives. Anyway, I'm going to move over, if I may, to Amanda Jane Weir, because as she's just put in the chat, and I was just about to come to you before I saw it in the chat, a large percentage of the NHS workforce are women, and we are losing staff hand over fist at the moment, not just because of COVID, but because we're finding it difficult to retain them. So just a few moments, Amanda Jane, if you would, please, about your role as Head of Staff Engagement at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in King's Lynn.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak, and it's a real honour to be here today. 76.7% of the NHS workforce are women, and 88.6% of the nurses and health visitors are women. We saw that working within the pandemic, when they're wearing lots of PPE, these menopausal ladies were absolutely, it was so sad to watch, and around menopause and put in a lot of support. And I'm very proud to be able to be here today to say that we have in fact normalised those conversations around the menopause. We have a policy in place to support those ladies. We have open and frank conversations. We have menopause champions, which are male and female, and we do normalise those conversations and hold menopause cafes, as well as manager training and awareness training. But absolutely, the message needs to go out across the NHS that this is a huge proportion of our workforce. And if we don't look after them, we simply will not retain them. And it is very, very sad.
I just want to take the opportunity of thanking Rosie Nixon from Hello magazine. Rosie, you've been fantastic in supporting wellbeing in this venture. And I would just love you, before anybody starts to leave, to say a few words if you would like to. Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you, Lesley. Hello, Your Royal Highness and everybody. It's been so inspiring listening to this conversation. It really has. And it's made me feel even more passionate and dedicated to launching this important pledge and getting it out there and continuing to amplify the stories of menopausal women and keeping this on the news agenda. I'm certainly one of Caroline's warriors. And I'm also very interested in talking to you, Caroline, as well, about whether we can have an end goal with the pledge here, because it's all very well us, talking about things like this, but really, how can we protect women by law in the workplace? So I would love to, I see this as a long-term project, and I'd really be interested in having a conversation with you on how we can take things even further.
Rosie, thank you so much. I'm sure that both Caroline and Carolyn will take you up on that proposal. Can I ask Vanessa Vallely, who is part of We Are the City, you making a point, I think, Vanessa, about how a menopause policy can really help attract talent, not just retain it.
Well, 100%. Can I just make an observation on a couple of other points as well, and I'll answer that. Part of We Are the City, we have many different arms, a community of 160,000 women, but we have part of that organisation is something called Gender Networks, which are the chairs and co-chairs of over 95 different firms, and there's some of our member companies on here. But what's been really interesting over the last 2 years is kind of menopause being part of their conversation, around other things like developing careers, male allyship, but just some of the things, just briefly what we've been doing. But there's been a lot of sharing of best practice. So people swapping policies, in between each different companies so that we can leverage and come up with, say, for example, a template or a gold standard. So we've been doing that. There's also been a lot of kind of requests for external organisations like Henpicked and some of the other ones that we've been kind of pointing our members towards so that they could gain the advice that they need. There's been initiatives such as Menopause for Men, Menopause for Teenagers, to help teenagers understand what their parents are going through. So there's all this great best practice coming out. And one of the things that I'd be really interested to do is to kind of, maybe talking to Rosie's point about an outcome, is creating like an open playbook that everyone can contribute to, that companies can then use as part of the pledge, so that they know kind of where to go or what to do, or where some of those examples of best practice. So just kind of throwing that one out there and just showing you a little bit what Gender Networks are doing. In terms of attracting and retaining talent, I go back to Caroline's point. These women are at their prime and we're losing them. They're also the role models that, for example, my community are looking for. They're looking up, so when they're looking up their organisation, if the women are missing, how can they aspire to be in those roles? So I think we've got a huge part to play in retaining them and keeping those role models, those potential mentors, sponsors in place within our organisation. So just another part of the business case there for you, Lesley.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. And then Sharon Vibert, Director at Henpicked, just a few words.
Oh, thank you very much, and I'm absolutely delighted and to join everyone today. And the stories that I've heard and all the sharing I hear every day in conversations, talking to great organisations. And I'd like to share the positives, which are that there are some amazing organisations out there that are absolutely putting in place best practice. And this year we have partnered with Wellbeing of Women and are actively very much in tune with them with regards to the pledge. And talking about next steps, it's for organisations to be accredited menopause-friendly employers. So this is a standard that's in place. We actually have one of the first UK accredited menopause friendly employers on this call. Julie Cridden from Asda won't tell you that herself, but they are one of the first in the UK to be an accredited employer. And we have hundreds in our membership that have joined this year. So the next stage is to put this best practice into place and to hold employers' feet to the fire. Absolutely. Looking at 6 key pillars: culture, policy and practice, facilities, training, engagement and evaluation. And this way we're going to encourage an environment where employees can talk openly about menopause. And that's exactly what we want. Having senior leadership teams that are actively talking about menopause, having senior women who younger women can look up to. You're absolutely right, Vanessa. You know, if we lose these women from the organisation, who are those that are inspired? So that's what we're very much doing. And what we're doing is supporting wellbeing of women, and every employer that actually applies for accreditation, we then pass on that to Wellbeing of Women, and we are delighted to be supporting you in the research that you are carrying out around menopause. It's so important.
Laura Meyer, just one quick soundbite from you, please.
I started a menopause network group at work at HarperCollins 2.5 years ago, together with a colleague, as I had very bad menopausal symptoms. I was getting a hot flash probably every 2 to 3 minutes. So really awful. And it's been a great support group for women just to talk about how they feel, if they're having symptoms, if they need any help. And just quickly, 2 things we did which have come up today is the top thing that the women said they wanted was help on confidence. So we've run confidence workshop to help with that. And also training for managers, because it was felt that if you reported to a younger woman who wasn't menopausal or a man who didn't understand so much about the menopause, that was difficult. So we've run training, and our CEO, he attended as well, and been totally supportive on it. So happy to share anything afterwards with anybody as well.
Lovely, thank you very much. And very, very quickly from Christine Palmer from Santander.
Yes, thank you. And we're very proud as an organisation to be supporting the pledge. We take this very seriously within the organisation and have done lots of things in order to give our organisation and our staff support. One we're particularly proud of is our partnership with PEPI, where we give personalised bespoke clinical advice to all of our employees who want to take it up on menopause through their mobile phones. And that's really been described as life-changing by the employees that have taken that up. So that's something that we are continuing to provide on the journey at Santander. We're by no means done, but it's something that we really are passionate about in the organisation. And as everybody has said today, we have senior role models within the bank, and we would love to keep them in the organisation, demonstrating that this is something that we need to talk openly about rather than just hide under a carpet and ignore.
Thank you, Christine. And then Julie Cridland from the Astor Group, you've already had a shout out or a name check. Do you want to just add a point of what you've achieved at the Astor Group? Just a quick soundbite.
A quick soundbite. So we've taken an organic approach to becoming menopause friendly. When we asked people what they most valued, top was the ability to share experiences, not feel alone, closely followed by the importance of an inclusive environment where you can talk openly about menopause. And I think the reality is providing support can be quite low cost. It's the investment that comes with the commitment to build a menopause friendly environment into your culture and the time it takes to build that trust and create a psychological safety. So
thank you.
That's what we're doing.
And Sarah Jane Cale, the founder of Positive Menopause, just a 30-second soundbite from you, please. Thank you so much for joining with us.
Thank you for having me here. I just wanted to reiterate something that Barbara said when she was talking about the situation that she found herself in at work. I was very similar, but what I did was I didn't leave my job. I started a community group and I built a network of women that could help and support one another in my local area. That then developed, and now I'm working with other communities under housing associations and that, and in turn with that, I'm actually working within their workplace so that they're able to discuss menopause and find ways in which they can implement policies and be inclusive, not just for those people that work within the housing associations, but also those people that live under their roofs. And so that's what I've been doing. And I think that it is very important to be able to talk about it and to have open and honest conversations. And coming from a construction background, which is very male dominated, I feel that I'm quite used to that. Yeah, that's where I'm at. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. As we draw to a close, Maxine Benson, who's the co-founder of Every Woman, you've put quite a few things in the chat. Can you give us your soundbite, Maxine?
The storytelling we've seen has been so important in driving the gender diversity conversation within organisations, and we need to take that best practice that we've learned and I think apply it to menopause, bringing the male allies on board. During Menopause Month, we're going to be putting a resource centre on Every Woman that we, lots of free information. If anybody's got role model stories that they'd like us to help amplify further, please send them to us and we will absolutely do that. It's just so important to keep raising awareness.
Thank you so much, Maxine. Now, I think Chris Pitt, who's the CEO of First Directors, had to leave us because I did give everyone leave to peel off at 11:30. But one of the things that he'd said to us previously, that menopause is not just a woman's issue. And I think that's what I've so enjoyed about our roundtable today, that it's recognised that this is everybody's business. Everyone's business, and we've got to make sure that we talk about it loudly, that we become menopause warriors, and that we include everybody in our families and our wider communities in the importance of keeping women healthy and fit and in the workplace. And I go back to a lovely saying, a global health expression, that the health of a nation is determined by the health of its girls and women. And on that note, I would like to just say that it's been a pleasure to talk to all of you. Thank you so much for your commitment, for giving us your time, for your ideas, for your thoughts, and for coming on this journey with us with Wellbeing of Women. It's so important, and particularly on this topic, because it may be towards one end of the life course, but it's incredibly important. And as I started off by saying, my generation of women is going to be the first generation in history to live longer in the menopausal state than they were reproductive. So let's make sure it's really, really, really worthwhile and full of good quality. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to the Wellbeing of Women team for getting us all together and for making all the logistics. Thanks to our 5 really inspiring speakers. You were all fabulous. And thank you to everybody who's contributed. If I've missed somebody out, it's not because I'm snubbing you, it's because I've been trying to get through everybody to the best of our ability. So thank you. And I look forward to welcoming you back to other WOW events in the future and partnering with you on any collaborative ventures that you'd like to propose. So thank you and bye-bye.